Okay, so your first writing assignment this quarter is, surprise, surprise, a writing assignment. And it's actually one of my favorite writing assignments that I give every year because I get to find out something about you. And I like finding out things about you. It's called the Phase Autobiography assignment. You are supposed to share about an extended period of your life that has changed you in some important way. And the minimum is 250 words for your final draft. Okay, so pre-writing is to list, write, and list again. Actually, so your pre-writing is a little bit extensive this time, but it will help you very much with your writing. Pre-writing is designed to help you plan what you're going to say. It's kind of like making a few little notes before you give a speech. Your pre-writing is going to be worth 5 points, like everything this quarter, and your cumulative is going to be 5 points. And the first thing is to list about 5 important times in your life and choose one. So I'm just coming up with a few ideas or examples of something that might mean something to you. Joining a football league. If you were hospitalized for some reason, maybe a heart problem, maybe for COVID, whatever, or a family member was hospitalized, maybe. A road trip with your grandparents, like maybe you went with your grandparents to Antigua or something. Volunteering for a brigade. There are many medical and evangelistic brigades in Honduras. Maybe you got to volunteer for one of those and it helped you mature in some way. Being class president, or I was president of my region church youth, and that would be something like that. Maybe that helped you learn about responsibility and leadership. So ideas for some time periods in life that might have taught you something or changed you in some way. It could be a positive way. It could also be a negative way. There could be something that happened in your life that made you not trust people. So it doesn't have to be a super happy thing. If you can't think of anything happy, then go for something not happy. It's okay. I'm not pressuring you to be super bubbly and encouraging. Write a strong focus statement that identifies the time period and how that changed you. It says basically how it changed you. So for me, I might say, doing school online during the pandemic has taught me that I can overcome insecurities and stubbornness to learn something new and confirmed my love of teaching. So that's what one thing this time period has done in my life. So you write a statement kind of like that, again saying the time period. So doing school online during the pandemic would be the time period. And the time period is the pandemic, and I narrowed it down to doing school because there are other things that have happened during this pandemic that I could write about, but I chose school, and then that has taught me this. So you can kind of use that as a kind of model for yours. And then the third thing in the pre-writing is to list at least 4 key events in this time period and at least 1 detail and 1 feeling for each. And so this is kind of what I have in mind here. I hope you can see it. In fact, I think maybe I'll zoom in. Can you see that better? Maybe. Learning to do Google Meets. So a feeling that I had was anxiety about learning new things. I always have anxiety about learning new processes. Despair. At one point I thought I was not going to be able to do it. A detail is that I sought help from a friend in Talanga. I also sought help from Mr. Jonathan, the teacher. He helped me some. Mr. Marvin helped me some. Obviously, Mr. Alejandro helped me some. So, yeah, those are some details. Making exam and forms, I enjoyed doing that. I really like making forms in general, and I liked making that. And for me, it was simple. I don't know whether that counts as a detail or not, but creating multiple choice and learning how to. In one class, actually, this quarter, they had to do something in a notebook, take a picture, and submit it to the exam. And so I had to learn how to do that, and that was kind of fun. And then making first videos. So at first I was intimidated. Making videos of myself is not my favorite thing. I'm not a YouTuber by any stretch of the imagination, although I feel like I might start to do more. And another one for the detail for that would be bad light. And as you can see right now watching this video, the light is going kind of in and out because I'm using sunlight. There's a curtain there that's fluttering a bit in the wind. And yeah, I'll put a picture of this on your classroom too with the video. So maybe if you can't see this that well in the video, maybe you'll see it in the picture. Finding a place. I found a place in the corner of our guest room. Last year I mostly did it on the back porch, but it wasn't a really good place to put a whiteboard. This is obviously not the best place, but it seems to be working okay. So those are some events in this time period, and at least one feeling or detail for each. So there's 3 steps in the pre-writing. It's worth 5 points. This time I decided, as I said before, to make the writing a little lower, and so it counts as a less of your accumulative, but still it counts. Like I said before, writing assignments, like if you count all 4 steps of 2 writing assignments, that's 5, 10, 15, 20, 2 writing assignments, that's 40. If you skip the writing assignments altogether, then that's 40 points you're not going to get. So you have to do this. And you know who I'm talking to. Okay. Let's see. So after you've done the pre-writing, then make sure that I've seen it and have checked it and maybe I've made a comment on it. And then after that, do your rough draft. Drafting, I want you to give an introduction, a body, and a conclusion, obviously, as always. Your introduction, you should give background info to focus your reader on what phase you're talking about. And so for mine, I would be talking a little bit about what the pandemic is and a little bit about how we decided to do online school and like that. And then end the introduction with your focus statement. So here it is. And you might have to adjust your focus statement to make it flow better with your introduction, but other than that, you should be able to use it. Your middle part, sequence of events with details that show and not tell your feelings. So instead of saying, for example, that I was intimidated by making videos, I could say that I felt my stomach had butterflies in it, and I was almost afraid. I called different people to give me advice, and I tried different things. So that would show that I was intimidated without using the word intimidated. Showing and not telling is always better. It's always better to appeal to the 5 senses in your reader than it is to appeal to their intellect. Because if you appeal to the 5 senses of your reader, then it seems to that person that he's more involved in what you're saying, and it's more interesting to read. So the sequence of events should show what you felt. Almost every good novel or even TV show, when you watch a TV show, the person doesn't say, "I'm so intimidated," but what the person does, the facial expressions, the actions, show that the person is intimidated. The posture, the whatever, shows that the person's intimidated or has anxiety or is enjoying something. You know. So work on that. Use action verbs. Conclusion. Explain the importance of this time in your life. So don't just tell the story, but afterward in your little paragraph at the end, it doesn't have to be long, but you need to say what this did for you, what this experience did for you. And so I have a book here that has an example, and I'm going to read the example to you. So it's called Getting to Know Joe. And this is like supposed to be an example of a student writing. I don't know whether a student actually wrote this or an adult wrote it pretending to be a student, but here we go. I live in an old 2-story home in Newark. My neighbors are mostly retired people with perfect front yards. One of the retirees, Joe Perez, lives on the corner. Because of our time together last summer, he and I have built a special relationship. At the start of the summer, Joe and I didn't hit it off too well. He was very picky about his yard. Every morning he was doing something to make the lawn look better. If we goofed around and stepped on his grass, Joe would yell at us from his front porch. Through mid-July, his yard was perfect, but then I noticed some changes. I didn't see Joe outside as much. His grass was getting brown and shaggy, and some weeds were growing in the flower beds. It wasn't like Joe to let things go. I didn't dwell on it, but when I walked by his place, I wondered why he wasn't taking care of his yard. One day, I was sitting on the curb, waiting for one of my buddies to show up, when Joe came out on the porch. I expected him to yell at me for sitting on the grass. Instead, he swayed back and forth. Then he fell down. I ran to my house and dialed 911. My neighbor, Mr. Perez, just passed out. He lives on the corner of Garden and Mills, I blurted. Then I turned back to the porch to see what I could do. Joe was awake, but he was as white as a ghost. He stared blankly at me. What happened to me? He mumbled. You passed out, Mr. Perez, I said, trying to catch my breath. But help is on the way. The paramedics came and took Joe to the emergency room. It turned out that Joe had been forgetting to take his blood pressure medication. He was going to be all right, and I was glad about that. He could be a grump at times, but I guess I cared more about Joe than I realized. I couldn't imagine my neighborhood without him. Joe thanked me for helping. Then I asked him, Is there anything I can do for you, Mr. Perez? Little did I know that one question would change everything. Joe found lots of things I could do. Soon I was cutting his grass, weeding his flowers, trimming his bushes, and edging the grass along his sidewalk. Before long, I was planting things like a pro and telling kids to stay off the grass. Instead of yelling at me from the porch, Joe now waved and smiled. A whole year has passed, and each week I help Joe. I realize that I can make a difference, so I also help some of the other older neighbors. Joe taught me that helping people is what life is all about. Okay, so at the beginning, he gives the kind of the situation. He lives in an area where there's a lot of old people, and but his family lives in that same area, and his house is even an older house, and he mentions Joe, and he have built a special relationship, and that is the focus here. So then in the middle of the essay, he uses a variety of little incidents and happenings that are little mini stories to tell what happened over a period of time. And he puts each one in its own little paragraph. And then at the end, and he also uses dialogue. And dialogue is really good for showing how someone feels. What happened to me? He mumbled like that. And then he says, You passed out, Mr. Perez. So he uses dialogue, and dialogue helps give interest to what he's saying. And then at the very end, he says, A whole year has passed. And then he says basically that he learned that helping people is what life is all about. So he has really developed part of his personality through his relationship with Joe. So that's just an example for you. Hopefully you can think of something that you can write about in your life that helped you change in some way. Maybe it helped you grow as a person like Joe did there. Maybe it helped you develop a skill, like being class president would help you develop the skill of leadership and responsibility. Maybe it was a bad thing that happened to you, like you had to be in the hospital and you learned to relate with people who have pain, different things. So pre-writing, 5 points, wait for me to check it and possibly comment on it, and then rough draft. Put each one under its separate assignment, and don't put them all in one assignment. And that should be a minimum of 250 words as you're writing your paper. So please don't say he was very, 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 very anxious. Please, no sentences like that. When you need more words, add more details. That's a big rule of thumb for writing. Happy writing.